welcome to Superintendents Roundtable. I'm Deborah Vinsel, the CEO here at Thurston Community Media, and we're back for another year to talk about education here in our community. With us here at the table are the superintendents from the 4 largest school districts in Thurston County. So I'd like to welcome back Patrick Murphy from the Olympia School District, Brian Horton from the Yelm Community Schools, Deborah Clemens from the North Thurston Public Schools, and the newest face here at the round table, Sean Dotson from the Tumwater Schools. So we're going to take a couple minutes with you, Sean, just to get to know you a little bit. This is the first time you and I have met, and I know that probably our viewers would like to know a little bit about you. So what should we know about Sean Dotson?
Well, my background, I started as an English teacher, a high school English teacher, speech and debate coach and drama coach, and so just every opportunity to get around kids. And during that time, got excited about the idea of being a building administrator, so went back to school and had the chance to serve, after getting my master's in administration, serve as an elementary, middle, and high school administrator. And that got me excited about the idea of serving at the district level, so went forward. Actually, as a middle school administrator, I was down in Elma School District, not too far from here. So from there, I got excited about this idea of how could you impact a whole system at the district level. So went back to school to pursue a certification to be a superintendent. I had the good fortune then of actually working as Dr. Clemens' assistant superintendent over on the east side of the state, and so it's fun to be working nearby again. And then this opportunity in Tumwater came up this year, and it was just exciting and a great chance to come back to this region where I've lived before and work in a fantastic school district.
Where were you before you came to Tumwater?
I was in Cheney School District over in the Spokane area.
And were you a superintendent there?
I was associate superintendent, so primarily human resources, but in the size district we were, I had a chance to work in all areas of the operation.
So what was it about Tumwater and Greater Thurston County that intrigued you?
Well, having lived down in Elma, I knew this area, so it wasn't foreign to me. And when we moved back to Eastern Washington, we always continued to say the Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater area was a space that we would love to come live again. And I have my son and daughter in school over on this side of the state, my brother nearby in Puyallup, and so we started looking at options. And when the position came open in Tumwater, we actually spent a day in the community, and it just felt like a fit. It's the right size district, the right type of community. It's known for quality schools, and this whole region has fantastic school systems, and so it felt like a place we'd want to put our own children, and it's been everything we expected it to be.
So you came to the district in July, started in July, so you've only been there 4 months. Have there been any big surprises?
I don't know about big surprises, but what I'd say is it's been just a super busy experience coming in, learning everything I can about our schools. I've found the people to be warm and friendly. I've found but the work is such a challenge. There's so much to learn when you come into a new school district, and so much I've been spending all my time talking with community members, with staff, with students. I just came from an assembly at Black Hills High School and was getting to know more about what the work they're doing, and perhaps I'll touch on that if I get a chance later.
Great. Well, welcome to the Roundtable. We're thrilled to have you, and look forward to continuing our conversations as we move on. So speaking of conversations, why don't we get started? It's the first Roundtable of this school year, and we were commenting a little earlier that September kind of evaporated before we even knew it was here. So I'm going to start with you, Patrick. What's new this year in your district?
Well, thanks again for having us here. I always enjoy coming on the program. It's nice not being the newbie anymore. I was in Sean's seat a couple of years ago, and going into year 3 in the Olympia School District, it's really feeling more and more like home. There's all sorts of new things happening in the Olympia School District. We have a lot of construction going on in our district right now. Both Olympia High School and Capitol High School are experiencing major renovations, addition of a new athletic field at Olympia High School, new theater at Capitol High School, and we're finishing up on some big construction projects at 3 of our elementary schools, at Roosevelt, at McLean, and I'm missing one.
Someplace else.
Yeah, Centennial. I shouldn't forget that because it's significant. Our school board is finishing up some final points on our strategic plan. We're continuing our one-to-one initiative in the school. I mean, there's all sorts of things happening in Olympia that we're really excited about. But like I said, just being in my third year and just continuing to hire great people and work with great people and work with a fantastic board, I'm just really excited.
Great. Brian, what's new in the Yelm Community Schools?
Lots of new things. We celebrated the opening or reopening of our stadium. We rebuilt the playing surface and the scoreboard and the lights. And one of the neat things about that is we've already used that stadium more than we used it all last year. So it is truly becoming a community facility. We're getting ready to be fully inundated with construction. We're almost done with the planning of a new Yelm Middle School and Southworth Elementary, and then there's safety projects that are being designed right now that will go on the other 7 schools. From a classroom level, we're really excited. We just opened a new Autism Classroom at the elementary level. And this is also the first year that we've provided services for deaf and hard of hearing kids in our district. So that's really exciting to watch the students really become part of the school culture, and that's been really exciting. I think lastly, we have really new administrative teams at the high school and Yelm Middle School. Really excited about the people and their ability to connect with kids, and I think that's really going to be a benefit. And I think our biggest celebration to open the school year is that for the 3rd straight year, Achievement's up. We're really happy with some of the things that are going on in our classrooms, and we were able to celebrate teachers and some of their great work that they did last year in our first couple of board meetings.
Great. Well, I know one of your new employees, Hannah Middlebrook, who is at the Yelm High School. She's my next door neighbor.
Nice.
So I was very happy to hear that she'd found a position in one of our local districts. So she'll be a real asset. Deborah, what's new at North Thurston?
Well, we expanded our Chromebook deployment one-to-one. You may recall last year we were piloting it at all of our middle schools, and now it's in place at all of our high schools. So all secondary school students have a Chromebook available. We also have partnered with Comcast to provide for families who qualify a reduced rate so that they can have internet access from home, which is really important as teachers begin to put more things online for students to be able to access outside of school, that students have access to the internet. So that's pretty exciting. In our elementary schools, we are implementing a social emotional learning curriculum from preschool through 5th grade. And that provides for a morning meeting structure where children come in and they receive a lesson on a particular concept, but they also practice things such as sharing how they feel and also listening to one another. And it really builds a wonderful classroom community that we piloted several different curricula last year, and then this year it's second step district-wide in our elementary schools. We heard from our community, and actually all of us, I think, after we reviewed our Healthy Youth Survey results, had a concern about meeting the needs of students who are experiencing anxiety or depression or even considering suicide. So this year we added 3 mental health specialists to our district. We now have 11 providing services, direct services to students throughout our school district. You know, really trying to meet the needs of the whole student, the whole child, recognizing that their social emotional needs, when those are met, they're better able to focus academically and be more successful in school.
Great, lots of cool things. So, Sean, other than you being new at the district, I'm sure there's other new things going on, and you've come in at a time when things are transitioning, so what can you share with us?
Certainly. Well, we do have, beyond me, some new leadership in our district office, a new assistant superintendent, new student support services director. So our whole team is really getting to know what's happening in our district. But as far as what's new this year, we've had, like what Patrick shared, we have a lot of construction going on across the district. We have at Tumwater Hill Elementary, a major construction project that's still in motion. Will finish in December. East Olympia Elementary just finished work in the spring. Black Lake Elementary and Black Hills High School are having work done. We're putting secure entries on all of our schools right now in that process to make sure that every building has a secure entry and with a controlled access point that makes the campus more safe for students. Mm-hmm. We've also been in the middle of expansion of a one-to-one Chromebook initiative so that all of our kids have those Chromebooks to take home. I've seen my own children using them at home and the evening as they're doing their homework, and it's fun to see how that plays out in the classroom as teachers learn to implement curriculum with that. And so there's a lot of learning taking place there. And in addition to that, our board passed an equity policy last December, and we've been moving that into operation. And so we've actually had Dr. Caprice Hollins working in our schools with our staffs around how do we build an inclusive and welcoming environment for all of our students, for everyone who we serve in our district. As I shared, I came from an assembly at Black Hills High School. Dr. Hollins was working with our students around that work, helping them to think about how do we make this school welcoming for every student? How do we make it a place where everyone feels valued, where everyone feels respected, and set an environment where students want to be and want to learn?
Great. So you touched a little bit on safety, so I'm going to jump to that right now in terms of safety in our schools. And you talked about having single point of entry contact. Are there other safety initiatives that the Tumwater Schools is looking at?
Well, certainly. You know, we have we use security cameras, of course, on our campuses to do that, and we're always working on our crisis plans and crisis response, making sure our students know how to respond in the event of an emergency. But the secure entries really are an important part of just making sure the campus is a place where we know who's in the building, and if something comes up, we have lockdown systems that can lock down the building immediately. But this is a constantly evolving area. So for us, it's learning from each incident, debriefing if something occurs, and saying what can we learn from that incident, how can it inform our next steps. It's ongoing work, but something we're committed to, because first and foremost, parents want to know their children are safe at school.
Right. Deborah, what's the safety program like in North Thurston?
So we just had a review done this summer, a safety analysis of all of our schools, and certainly secure entrances comes up, fencing for the school site, as well as being able to lock down the facility, looking at what are our practices, making sure that our staff is operating in a way that ensures safety for students. But one of the things that I think often gets overlooked when people think about school safety is traffic flow around schools. And so one of the things that this organization did was to look at the beginning and end of school day, how buses are arriving at the school site, where parent drop-off is occurring, where are students crossing safely to the schools. We've been successful in securing a few grants, working with community partners to put in a safe walk to school routes. That includes expansion of pedestrian crosswalks. So you see those lighted crosswalks to help make drivers aware that there's a pedestrian attempting to cross the street. So that when you look at where students are injured, parking lots before and after school is an area that we need to focus on. Of course, it's costly to make changes to parking lots and adding separate loops for dropping off buses, so that will be part of a future bond for us in February of 2020. But in the short term, we can do some things like what we did at Meadows Elementary School, where we are repainting the parking lot and identifying a space where parents can and will be trained and supported in dropping their students off safely and separating it from the buses.
I think that's such a good point that, and it's not to diminish it, the pedestrian things of literally dealing with pedestrians, because I think when people hear the word school safety, they think of extreme events and that type of thing. But that whole getting your children safely into and out of a vehicle or across the street, it's much more likely that there's going to be an unfortunate incident in that kind of a scenario than something that's going to draw national attention to your school.
Yeah, elementary school children, sometimes they get excited, they see their parent, and then they dart across, and they're difficult to see for drivers, especially someone who's backing up or just distracted by other things that they're trying to get to.
By
that
the kids
next
in your
thing
own car.
Right.
So how about you? What's going on at Yelm,
very similar
safety-wise?
themes from that same conversation. We've been working both from our bond measure and from some things that we did. We built a new entry and exit to the high school last year that's been very successful, and it completely separated buses from student cars and sidewalks. And it took 700 cars a day off a stretch of the city where we get a lot of congestion, a lot of accidents. Each of our buildings that's not being rebuilt on the bond are getting new entry systems. They're getting new controlled access. They're getting new camera systems. And then we looked at each of those 7 campuses separately and said, what do they need? So in a couple of buildings, it's playground safety, removing some equipment that we can update to better items for kids to play on. Sometimes it's fencing, it's lighting, it's actually signage in many cases. But and in 2 of our buildings, we're actually putting doors on classrooms where there weren't any before. So it increases our ability to separate and lock down if we need to. And then on the training side, we undertook an endeavor to train every one of our employees in a protocol called ALICE. And it's very popular, very common, but
And what does that, do you know what that acronym stands for?
It's a variation of run, hide, fight concepts, but it's an enhanced lockdown, different protocols, commands that you use your PA system for, a different way of looking at an event where you can get kids separated and direct traffic better. And we've trained our bus drivers on what that would look like on a bus, what it would look like in the cafeteria with our food service workers, custodians, et cetera. Just, it's really strong awareness of there are things you can do other than be traumatized in an event like that. So it's been very popular. Our employees have really enjoyed the training, and we're taking a modified version of it to our students here very shortly. So it's good. But I think you're right. A lot of times we focus on these severe events, but it's the little things we can do in preparation. We're doing a lot of different protocols, written protocols in classrooms that substitutes can pick up very easily. We borrowed a lot of ideas from North Thurston on that. So safety it was a big part of our bond measure, and it's a big part of our operation right now.
Great. Patrick, what about safety in Olympia?
Well, I think of the comment that Sean made when he was talking a little bit about his new position and how he's coming into an area with a lot of great schools and school districts that do a lot of great work. And as I hear my 3 colleagues to my right talk about things, there's so much commonality about what we're doing. When it comes to safety, I really want to focus on what you said, Deb, that when you hear the word school safety, you immediately go to the worst case scenario. I mean, you really immediately go to a shooting or something horrible like that, an intruder in a school. And the fact is that our schools are incredibly safe. Right? They are the safest place for a kid to be during the day. You got a better chance of being struck by lightning than some of these things that are happening, which is true. But it's interesting, we were talking about the one-to-one model and the increase in technology and the way we're using it. It's that technology that is adding to that fear. And so a big thing that we talked about with safety this year is we had a speaker come at the beginning of the year, and we were talking about the infusion of technology in the schools and how do you use it in a healthy way. And we talk about things like digital wellness, that, what are ways that we might be getting information that's actually adding to that anxiety and depression that's causing us to be fearful about things that before technology we weren't so much so. We have all those things. Our construction has access control points. We have a great relationship with the Olympia Police Department. Our SROs are awesome. We have emergency preparedness plans that are very thorough at all of our schools. But I do think those are not the likely places that deal with when a kid is going to possibly be hurt. It's the things that we were talking about in the parking lot. It's the things about the playground equipment. Yeah. When Deb talked about the second step curriculum, talking to our kids about how to deal with emotions, training up our students about harassment, intimidation, and bullying. We're this year piloting a new curriculum at our secondary schools about signs of suicide. It's called Lifelines curriculum, and really identifying those things that would help our students when they're really struggling with some really tough issues. So I think those are really the safety issues that we know are incredibly important. That other stuff's important too, but sometimes it takes a bigger part of our time than I think it should. But it's natural, given what the technology puts at people all the time.
Right. So it's not just the physical safety; it's the emotional and intellectual safety too for children in your care. Deborah, you were going to say something.
To share something new that we're doing this year that is using technology is a program called Smart Tag, and each of our students was assigned a tag that they, whenever they get on a school bus, it's swiped so the bus driver knows that the child is on the bus, because speaking of fear happens when a parent is expecting their child to come home and they're
don't
not
get off
there.
the bus.
And they call our transportation department and they're searching for a child. And sometimes the child may be very young, and their name on their formal registration is a name that they've never been called. And so they could be on the bus and not even responding when we're trying to identify the student. So now, every student, when they're on the bus and get off the bus, sometimes there's communication errors that occur where a student thinks that they've informed their parents that they're either going with a friend or they're getting off at a different stop, and then the parent's expecting them. And so that smart tag technology is really going to help us be able to quickly answer a parent's question when a child is missing.
Right. Anybody else have other
Well,
safety?
we're going to do the same thing. We're piloting the same thing. And again, it's technology that could be very helpful. It's also technology that could make people go a little cuckoo.
Right.
You know, and with Amazon and FedEx and UPS, we like to know where our packages are, and now we can know where our kids are. And I think, you know, we have some parents that will log into their Family Access to check on their students' grades. A ton. We can track it. They're constantly
Right.
looking at that. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. Again, I think that we really need to be thoughtful about technology now as it's coming at us. Is it a healthy use of that technology?
Right.
We have had situations. I mean, again, our bus drivers do an amazing job.
They
They
do.
deliver students incredibly well. We have some incidents every once in a while where they don't end up where they're supposed to, and communication happens, and it'll be good to have that tool. But again, I think we should always be looking for that balance
Right.
when we're using
I
technology.
have a friend whose child, I think she was in first grade, you know, bus driver dropped everybody off, looked in his rearview mirror, didn't see any little heads,
Oh, no.
you know, headed back to the barn and to the bus barn, and you know, everything was fine. It all worked out. And when the daughter was asked, she said, "Well, I didn't know if I should say anything because I didn't want to interrupt him." So I was like, well, next time you need to like go, hey, you know. So
And you know, we're installing now the rest of our tablet technology on our buses, where it loads the route in for the driver, and they tap the kid. You know, they have the list of all the students who should be on the route, and they tap the kid on the tablet
Right.
as they board or disembark, and it helps parents keep track of it. And it really is that when a parent calls and says, my student didn't get off at the right bus stop, now we have the ability to backtrack.
like, now we know where they are.
And it happens a lot faster. So we're looking forward to having that
Yeah.
on all our buses. They're being
Right.
installed now.
Good. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I just think so much of what I hear about it is, you know, we're in the world of education. So much of preparing kids and keeping kids safe is about teaching them good routines, teaching them
Right.
how are they emotionally safe with each other, how do they treat each other in ways that kids feel safe at school, and as well as how do you handle those, educate kids about what they need for physical safety. We do have speakers coming in to talk to kids about how do you respond if there's a big event, those things that we never want to think about, but it's also the day-to-day routines our teachers are teaching kids through our drills to say if there were anything from a fire to an earthquake, how do we take care of those, how do we stay safe in those situations. Those are things we do every year as a matter of routine, but it's finding the areas where we can do something more to help kids feel like they are in a place where people care about them and that they're going to be safe throughout the day.
Okay. So let's move on. We're still talking about kind of facilities and that type of thing. So you've all got, some of you have levies or bonds coming up, construction projects, that kind of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about that. So we started with you yet?
So
Start with
I
you.
can give an update on some of the construction projects that the 2014 bond funded. We had a ribbon cutting for River Ridge Auxiliary Gym. It's a beautiful new gymnasium that provided more space for during the day physical education as well as after-school activities. And so we had that ribbon cutting ceremony right before school started. So
Nice.
the gym is under full use. Pleasant Glade Elementary School, finishing construction there. That was a complete modernization. And in addition, there's an early learning center that's currently under construction and is scheduled to open next fall with preschool classes scheduled there. And then North Thurston High School is another major project that's wrapping up. All of the construction inside the building has pretty much been completed. Outside is a new bus loop separating, like I said, the bus traffic from parent traffic from student traffic. And that will be completed yet this year.
Great. Brian.
We're about 5 months from breaking ground on our new middle school, and that will be a 100,000 square foot, 2-story building.
Wow.
Very exciting. It's really beautiful. We're at nearing the end of the design phase, and then a year after that, we'll start construction on a new elementary school, and that's Southworth Elementary. So as you come into Yelm, that will be the first building that you see.
So is that an additional elementary or
it's
a replacement?
It's replacing a 50-year-old building. And again, 2-story construction, absolutely wonderful looking building. And we're really close to starting our 7 safety and security upgrades. 5 of the 7 schools will be done by the time school opens next year. And then 2 of the projects have a little more scope to them, and they'll be done the following summer. So we're real excited about that. One of the unique features of our new middle school is that our district data center will be housed inside that building. We're building that into the footprint of that, so we'll be able to, if we need to, in an emergency situation, we'll have access to the district camera system. But that's where all of our technology training will take place. That's where a lot of our repairs and our tech team will be training and working in that facility. It'll also become a really neat teaching facility.
Is that going to be at the same location or close to the current school?
It'll be on the same campus. Both of them will be on the same campus.
And then the old school will be...
Our old middle school will be used for 1 year to house our elementary kids while
the new elementary is being built.
Elementary is being built, and then the final phase in our project will be to demolish the old middle school, and that becomes the athletic fields for that site.
Okay. Patrick.
Well, I mentioned most of the construction that's going on at the beginning with my comments, but there was one I didn't mention, which is we are in a new district office that used to be the old Olympia newspaper building. And by moving to that site, we freed up the old district office, that was over at where Avanti High School is located, the old Knox building over there.
Legion and East Side.
Yeah, it's right there on East Side and Legion.
Yeah.
And so with us moving out of that building, it'll allow room for more expansion of alternative learning opportunities for students at Avanti High School, maybe some things with online learning with our students receiving special education services. So we're excited about that space while we move into the new space that we really think is going to be just a beacon of connectivity for the district and for all the community to come to our new district office. So we're excited to share that with our generous voters that passed that bond for us. But the biggest election thing that's coming up, and it is actually all of us, is this February is our maintenance and operations levy. And you might remember last year, Deb, when we were talking about the legislative session, a big push was about the levy. And that we had gone from levies that allowed us to collect around 24 to 28% of our overall budget from that process down to that $1.50 amount. And it really, for a lot of us, it cut us in half. I mean, we really just lost a huge ability to raise funds for all the different services we provide. And we've talked about this before, basic education services, teachers, nurses, librarians, principals, all those things are paid for by the levy. And the good news was at the end of the last legislative session, they did increase our ability to get closer to that. We're still not to where we were, but that was a huge win for all of us, I believe, during the last legislative session. We thanked our legislators for their hard work on that, and it's going to be a critical vote this February when we go out and ask our voters, who have all been incredibly generous, as I've said, but we'll probably need to do a little bit more educating, explaining how things have changed, but it's really important this February for all of us.
Yeah, it's absolutely a replacement of a current levy, and all of us will be on the ballot in February.
Do you all have levies?
Yes, we do.
We do.
have levies,
Yeah,
okay.
we all have levies. And funding essential services for students. Nurses, we have so many students who have life-threatening allergies and they need health care plans to be able to participate in our schools. And so nurses and counselors, additional teachers, everything that the college and career readiness opportunities that our students need, all of that, just this day-to-day school operations. And then we will also have a bond on the ballot to address River Ridge High School, modernization of Camachin Middle School, new roofs for 3 aging elementary schools, HVAC systems, so the heating and ventilation systems for those schools, as well as looking at safety at all of the school sites.
How about you?
Well, we'll have
Bonds and levies?
the levy that everyone is talking about, the educational programs and operations, those things for day-to-day expenses. We're in the process right now with the board of assessing our current needs. We had a bond as well in 2014, and that's funded improvements I shared before, a renovation of Peter G. Schmidt Elementary and expansions at our middle schools. So that's been super helpful. What we're doing right now is looking at where we're headed in the future. And what we know based upon development happening in our district is we're going to keep growing. And we still, even with the expansions we have 33 portable classrooms at our elementaries. And we're creeping back into those elementary classrooms. And so there'll be a point we have to come back and look at an additional elementary. And we have property for that already, fortunately. And at some point in the future, if what our demographer shows us makes sense, or happens, we'll actually need another middle school as well. But in the short term, we're really looking at what are the projects that weren't funded on that 2014 bond that we really need to complete in the short term. And that does include some of the things that Dr. Clemens shared about roofs and HVAC in some of our buildings that are aging, and it's time to replace them. It also includes security cameras, and because we'll need another elementary school soon, doing some of the pre-development work, the planning, the work that makes that so that when we do come to our community with a bond, we're ready, we have a solid plan, and we're ready to have that building done in short order, so we can bring students out of portables and back into building classrooms, which is what we know is best.
Okay, Brian, what's going on
Very,
out there? Yeah.
very similar conversations.
Yeah.
We're starting to entertain as there are some very large housing developments planned for Yelm. When will we need a 7th elementary school? When will we need to expand beyond our current capacity? We have 94 portables right now, and our bond, when we replace the 2 buildings, it takes away about a third of those old portables, but we still have quite a few. And just the board has really asked us to take a long look, a 20-year look or more, out of what will be our real estate needs. We do have property for a new elementary if we have to go there, but the prediction in Yelm is that within 20 years, the size of the city could double. And so we have to start planning now to see what our infrastructure and building needs are to handle that.
Yeah, I was out in Yelm 2 weeks ago and hadn't been out in Yelm for quite a while, and was like, wow, it's a lot of development and growth out there. So we hit everybody's.
I think so.
Everybody, okay. So we've talked safety and facilities and all. Let's talk the learning piece now. So Deborah, you mentioned that you're building an early learning center.
We are.
So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then
Okay.
everybody else, your early learning plans and programs.
So we continue to expand our early learning opportunities. Unfortunately, in our community each year, just for the attendance area of North Thurston Public Schools, we have more than 300 children who qualify for state-funded preschool who are not being served because there aren't enough slots in our community for those students to attend. We looked at our WA Kids data, which is our kindergarten readiness assessment that our kindergarten teachers complete with our students when they begin kindergarten. And between the children who have access to programming and children who are living in poverty based on the federal standards, we have a 22% gap in kindergarten readiness. So we know that children who are not having access to these programs, it's impacting their ability to be successful on day one coming into kindergarten. So we're expanding our preschool programs, as I mentioned, and then this year, for the first time, we are beginning a Future Ready kindergarten program. It will start in February after the first semester of the school year is completed, and it will serve students who turn age 5 after the August 31st deadline that we have right now for children to begin kindergarten, age 5 between September and January. And we're going to begin the program in our highest poverty schools, the schools that have the highest percentage of students living in poverty. Space, as long as we have space, And the children will attend a future-ready kindergarten. The state calls it transitional kindergarten until the end of the school year, and then in the fall they'll start kindergarten with all of their peers.
Great. All right.
As I said, we focused on some of our specialty areas in getting ready for this year. Early K-3 level Autism Classroom. That's not really early learning, but that was a major focus, and it's actually a facility we're building into the new Southworth campus. Our early learning program now consists of 3 developmental preschools and 1 Title I preschool. And so we're currently serving about 120 students, but in the programs that we're not providing, we have, just like North Thurston, tons of capacity where we would love to serve more students. And what we have really focused on is providing curriculum in math and early literacy supports and training on our elementary curriculums to the local preschools and daycares, and trying to get those early learning skills ready to go. We would love to experiment with the transitional kindergarten. We've looked at that. Space is a major problem for us on that, but it's something we do want to take a look at.
So just for our viewers' sake, can you define what Title I means when you say it's a Title I program?
It's, in the most colloquial terms, it really is a chance for us to get non-special needs students into preschool programs. So it's predominantly students of low-income background. It's at our McKenna Elementary School in Pierce County, and so it's a federally, we're using federal dollars to fund that staff.
Gotcha. Okay. Patrick.
Well, I think I'd start when we're talking about early learning with just sort of framing it by saying that everybody knows, all the research says that that is the best place to put your money. It is the biggest bang for your buck. And what's interesting is that the federal government has really pushed this idea that if we can identify children when they're really, really young with a disability, let's get them into a preschool right away. So we have preschools, like we all do, where we're serving students with special needs. And the reason why they know that is because if you have that exposure at a really young age and you have that repetition, that learning, neurologically it actually builds up the capacity of that student and their ability and their learning ability and their thinking ability, so that when they get to school, they're not as far behind if they didn't have that. Well, the truth is that works for everybody, right? So the idea that we have preschools that are there for all of our students with special needs, we really need preschools for everybody. There needs to be universal preschool, and I know they're talking about that at the state level because all of our students benefit from it. And there are a ton of students that either don't qualify for special education, or they haven't been identified, or there's other environmental factors in the home that are playing a part that does nothing to do with a disability that would benefit greatly from preschool. So, you know, like Deb and others have mentioned, I think we're missing some students in our community in terms of the identification process. Mm-hmm. We're working as closely as we can, but I think we can do more with the medical, folks in our area, about those families that come in. Hey, let's make sure you hook up with your local school district. All of the private preschool providers, trying to have a better relationship with them. We're doing that work. Olympia, I believe, is the only district around here that we currently have our own birth to 3 preschool program for students with special needs. A lot of school districts aren't doing that anymore. There's costs involved with that. But we think that allows us to have a continuation of services that really helps us in Olympia. And we're getting some new tools that my director shared with me to help us gather that data better, like the WaKids data that Deb talked about, so we can better serve our students. But I just want to reemphasize that point that preschool and starting as young as we can is really makes a big significant impact on things like graduation rate 12 years later.
I just wanted to clarify, we do all offer the Birth to 3 program. We're contracting those services through parent to parent. Right. But what Patrick brought up about early intervention, we have created child find posters that we have placed out in the community that provide information on developmental milestones for children, and there's a little peel off where they can call for a referral. And because it's so important, if we can identify students who need those special education services earlier, we know that it pays off. We had a 10% increase in identification, and we just started putting those out out in the community in about January, February of last year. So they were only in the community for a few months before we were already seeing a difference. We've also, and I know the other districts have as well, invested in parent education. We have a Ready, Set, Read program, and then of course partnering with South Sound Reading Foundation to really make sure that children have access to books.
Right. How about early learning in Tumwater?
Well, you'll hear echoes of what you've already heard. We have the developmental preschools in place. Patrick said it well. We know that it works for all kids just as well as it does for our students in developmental programs. We serve a little less than 100 students in those programs in our district currently, but we also have in our strategic plan this goal around increasing opportunities in early learning. And so that has so far really been around outreach to preschool providers in our district to work on how do we partner together, make sure that they have the information we have on kindergarten readiness. Our Walk Kids results I looked at for last year, there's 6 domains that they assess students in on that, and it's really kind of an observational assessment. And about 40% of our students coming into kindergarten were showing readiness in all 6 domains. Now, there's an additional group that shows readiness in 5 of those domains. But we know if we can figure out ways to ramp that up, that's going to have a long-term positive impact. And so what we're really working on right now is saying, okay, in the future, how do we identify the gaps? Who are the students that are underserved right now who aren't getting access to good preschool programs? We know there's some quality private programs in the area, and we don't want to replace what they already do, but we need to figure out who are the students who need additional service and work toward opportunities to fill that gap in creative ways. And right now, that doesn't come with, I would say, a sustainable funding stream. So we really have to get creative to find ways to do that. And some areas through ECAP programs or Head Start, there's ways to do so. But for some of our other students, we really have to rely on grants or tuition in order to help students be able to participate right now. It's not where we ideally want to be in the long term.
Right. But hopefully we can make some movement with the legislature to provide support so that programs like this are available more readily to all of our preschool students.
Certainly.
So let's kind of jump to the other end of the educational arc and talk a little bit about career and technology education programs. Not every student is on a 4-year college path, and there's a lot of conversation, I think, about, saying there are other ways to be successful. And so let's talk about those programs in your districts. I can't remember where you started last time. Is it your turn, Brian?
Yeah, we have an incredibly robust career technical education program in Yelm, and we're very proud of that. And what we're really proud of is it serves students no matter what their graduation track might be. So high participation in career and technical ed for our kids that go to 4-year universities, all the way through trade schools and the military. CTE provides a major influence in our science education in our district. A lot of our core science is taught through our CTE classes. And from there, our students have the ability to choose any number of programs. And what also is really important is those career and technical education programs have very strong business partnerships, and they have very strong organizations outside of school. So the students are able to learn a lot of leadership. They can do amazing activities, travel a little bit. Our FFA program is the largest in the state. Twice been named the top FFA program in the country. And those students have great opportunities, and it just keeps growing and building on itself. So I think some people tend to say, I get on a soapbox a little bit, is that we're losing the comprehensive high school experience. And what we're finding is that when we offer robust and diverse CTE programs, we're not only able to have a really strong core instructional program, we're also very able to offer diversity in course selection for kids. And we really love that our 4-year college-bound kids are working right next to our students on IEPs, and you can't tell the difference in the classroom in terms of their plan for being in that class. And we offer the ability for students to learn and earn significant certifications and accolades that help them in their high school and beyond plan. So one of the things that we really like is we want to keep that diversity. We're trying not to, and sometimes in the new funding mechanisms of schools, it feels like we have to squeeze down some of our CTE programs, but we're really fighting not to do that.
Good. Patrick.
You know, I'm not sure if I've mentioned this here before, Deb, but I had somebody a few years ago that asked me the question. They said, what's the difference between being career ready and being college ready?
That's a good question.
And the answer was nothing. There's no difference. And this is what this person said to me. I said, well, explain to me, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, what is it that we need for our students when they go to college? We want them to have strong people skills. We want them to be problem solvers. We want them to be resilient. We want them to have creativity. Well, what employer doesn't want that? Right? And so it was kind of like this idea that there's these two tracks. This doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, we don't know the jobs that our kids are going to be going into in the future. And we also know that four-year colleges in general are scrambling right now, because that antiquated way that, you know, you do this and then you do that and that goes here, four-year degree, is kind of becoming not the norm anymore. And so I think as we do that, as we think about that in our school systems, and we think about, you know, that comprehensive high school experience, that we are constantly trying to adapt to what is it that we need to do to better prepare our students for where they're going into, not being stuck with any particular way that we do things, but really thinking about where they're going. And so we had a conversation this morning with superintendents about career and technical education pathways will now meet the requirements for the testing. So, you know, you had to pass the Smarter Balance to graduate from high school. Well, if you do this particular CTE sequence, you don't have to worry about that anymore. So it's trying to change the culture and the way we're thinking about things. But again, we want those key characteristics and traits for our students, that they can do those things, whatever path they choose, whether it's the military, college, or career, and it's probably going to be some combination of things. And so we're excited about continuing to provide hands-on opportunities for our students to problem solve through our career and technical education. We get funding through that. We're moving more of it into our middle schools. We have more industrial arts programs, shop-type programs, computer science programs, all funded through CTE. And we're very excited about that. And I think that you're going to see less distinction between core academics and CTE. It's really going to start to meld, because you got to have it everywhere. And we're seeing dual credit opportunities too, where you take an accounting class, you get a math credit while you're getting that CTE credit. So it's exciting, and it's where we need to be going.
I'm thrilled to hear that, because in a previous life, I was a vocational teacher and teaching video production, and my students wrote scripts and they had to research topics, but at that time didn't get credit for it. It was an elective credit, and they did all of this work that really had academic relevance.
Journalism.
You know, And so I'm thrilled to hear that that is becoming the norm.
It should be.
So,
there's a lot of work going on around looking at course equivalencies. How does a course like that equate to an English class potentially? And because they're doing some of the same work in those courses, and that's something we've been looking into. And I think every student benefits from CTE programs when they get the chance to participate. I've had two children who really got excited about business education programs, and through FBLA had opportunities. The Future Business Leaders of America had opportunities that they would have never had without that, and that's helped them choose the careers and directions they want to go. So whether a student's looking at trades or career technical college, community college, four-year college, we have to give them pathways that help them get there. And that's been our work, is how do we develop really multiple pathways that students can follow. And we've been moving that down. We've had that in high school, good ag programs, science programs, business programs, but we're saying, how do we move that into middle school so that students can begin to explore early? And we've done that through some Project Lead the Way programs, which are really science-based programs that get kids interested, but they're very applied science. They're around actually going through and project-based learning, and so it's an exciting way for students to learn some of their core content, and so that's been an area of expansion for us, and we continue, as we add those, we see kids engaged and excited about it, so it's just continued to grow, and something that we'll keep building from as we go into the future. But then that leads into high school programs, and students can always shift courses, of course, anywhere along the way, but the idea is that they're starting to go down a path and learn a little bit, and if that's not their interest, then turn and look into another area, so that by the time they get through our experience, they have a solid grounding, maybe an industry certification, something that allows them to move into the future, or they really are excited about a pathway that they'll take into post-secondary.
Deborah, anything to add?
Well, sometimes I hear in the community people say, well, if they would bring back the wood shop, or they would bring back skilled trades.
Right.
And I think the reality is that all of our districts really do a great job of providing a variety of opportunities. It's called career and technical education, but we still offer welding classes, we offer automotive classes, and we know that there's a huge shortfall of people available to fill skilled trades positions, not just in our immediate community, but across the state. And so we have not gotten rid of those programs. The woodshop may look different. It may have a computer component to driving a particular machine, but it is very much present in our schools. The one thing that we have added over the last couple of years as a focus is an entrepreneurial component to kind of the student connection, or the organization that's tied to a course. So we had, in 2015-16, we had 11 different businesses that students were running, and today we have 25 across our schools. And we have plans for expansion of 4 more this year, and it includes middle school students as well. And it's an opportunity for students to really apply their learning in a very practical way, where they have to see something, a product from beginning to end. So we're pretty excited about that.
Great. Anything else about CTE that anybody wants to jump into? Okay. So, well, let's talk about graduation then. So I know that one of the things we're trying to do is close gaps and get kids to graduation or post-secondary. So what's happening to help students in your district to do that?
Well, we talked about some of these things already, and we are for high-performing school districts that have some of the highest graduation rates in the state, if you look at everybody sitting around this table. In Olympia, we have around a 90% on-time graduation rate, which is a 4-year rate. But one of the things that I really appreciate that our school board has really led a conversation about, along with our staff, teachers, principals, is the idea that a 4-year graduation rate might not be what some of our students need. Our 5-year graduation rate is almost 96%. And some of those might have been students that arrived recently from another country. Maybe it's somebody that's dealing with some sort of trauma that happened in their life. Maybe it's a special education student that was their plan all along, was to go an extra year or 2. And so I think we're just again, we got to get out of this one-size-fits-all mentality and really think about graduation differently, that everybody's on a different pathway. But ultimately, we do know that if students don't graduate from high school, at least the statistics show that they have a less likelihood to live as healthily,
Right.
Income and those types of things. The conversation I mentioned earlier that we were having as a superintendent group this morning was really talking about ways to give more flexibility to demonstrate your knowledge and proficiency as a potential graduate in our system, and that was House Bill 1599. So it used to be that you had to meet these credit requirements, 4 credits of English, 3 credits of math, and so on, but you also had to pass the Smarter Balance assessments in math and language arts to go. Well, a presenter who spoke to us this morning showed that there was a pathway to get to that, meeting that certificate of achievement without having to pass that particular test. And I think we've talked about this before. You could demonstrate on your SAT or your ACT. You could demonstrate it by taking an advanced placement or an international baccalaureate class. You could take the armed services exam. You could take a CTE course sequence like we were talking about. So we think that having that type of flexibility, you might see our graduation rates that are already pretty high go up even higher, because there shouldn't be that high stakes exam that determines whether or not you're a graduate when you can demonstrate so many things that show you really know what you're doing. So we'll be interested to see what type of support we get out of OSBI on 1599. And when I say support, clarity about some of these things and how our counselors are going to have to do a lot of work on this now. We didn't like the inflexibility of the SBA, but it was simple. You either got it or you didn't. Now we've got all these different things, and does this test count, and where's the cutoff? So I think there's excitement there, but there's some work that we're going to need to do to clarify that with our parents and families and staff.
I'm just kind of open it up for comment, so, because I get a sense that you're all kind of in the same place. Yeah.
And Graduation is really my personal passion. It's what I work on the most in our district. We started what we call Graduate Young. It's a community impact initiative, and last year we had 104 businesses, faith-based organizations, and civic groups sign on and commit that they were going to engage students and families within our community to support whatever part of this graduation conversation is needed. If that's helping low-income students navigate the different types of barriers that might be out there, to helping new families to the area, folks obtain English language skills, whatever that is, and that's a pretty significant commitment. And this year we're adding a personal pledge where individuals can sign up to do the same thing. First year results, first year is never a trend, but we gained 5% on our high school graduation rate. First time, we think it could be the first time that we tipped over 90%, which we're very proud of. And our district graduation rate, we have an alternative school that serves about 120 kids. Our district rate is also up in a promising way. We've made 2 guarantees that we think will help with graduation, and one of those is that every incoming 9th grade student will have high school credit in the bank already. Mm-hmm. And then our second guarantee is we want to have every graduate leave our school with a college transcript. And so we're working very hard to get those systems in place. Patrick hit it right on the head. This is placing extreme responsibility and pressure on our counselors to appropriately advise students, because it isn't as simple. The buckets they're no longer buckets. They're really highways that need to be navigated and make sure that we get off on the right turns. But we're really focusing on not only graduation, but what is the continuing education that student needs to enact their plan so that they can move into the workforce at the point at which they want to go into the workforce. And we celebrate equally if they go into the military, into a trade school, 2-year, 4-year, whatever that program is. If we help them plan, then we're helping them be successful adults, and that's what's really behind the passion of Graduate Young.
Mm-hmm. Deborah, how about you in graduation?
The one thing I would add is for our district, we have been committed to ensuring that students establish patterns of passing classes and being successful in middle school. So one of our strategic plan outcomes is passing all classes in grades 6 through 9, mm-hmm. so that by 10th grade, students are on track to graduate on time. And some of the things that we're doing in that regard is expansion of summer school programming for students who, if they don't pass a class, can make it up as early as possible so that they are on track to graduate on time. And then this year we have added, our high schools have a 6-period school day. We've added a 7th period. So if a student fails a class, maybe they failed a class last year, they can stay that extra hour and try to make up that class during the school year. So they would actually be taking 7 classes rather than 6. And again, the goal is to help them be able to graduate on time with their peers.
Great. And how about you?
Well, similarly, with our graduation rates, it is exciting to me to see the high graduation rates we do have across this region. I mean, that doesn't happen everywhere, and it doesn't happen by accident either. That's
right.
Intentional work that's being done, and that's exciting. And so I've been asking the question, what is that work that's happening? And I know in our schools we have graduation coaches in our high schools that are meeting mm-hmm. with kids regularly who need additional assistance and support, advocating for them, helping them make sure they've got a good plan going forward to get to graduation. We have credit retrieval classes both after school and during the summer. So if a student didn't make it in a course, they have a way to make that up and come back. And as we talk about, you mentioned the idea of closing gaps, and one of the things we know is as we look at that, we say we've got a high graduation rate and there's not many kids who aren't making it through our system, but it's important that we look at that and say, are some groups of students more successful in our system than other groups of students? And if so, what can we do about that? And I think that's the work ahead. That's what's outlined certainly in our equity policy, is saying how does everything from our district policies to the way we do things in our schools, does it lead us to allow some groups to be more successful while making it more difficult for others? And so that's the tough work that we're exploring now, because when you start to get down to that last 5 to 7%, we want every one of those students to be successful. So now the easy work is done. it gets into this complicated, what do we do for each student in each group to make sure that we've got a place where all students can be successful. And some of that goes back to our previous question as we're talking about CTE programs and pathways. It's finding ways that students feel engaged and excited about something in their school program. And as we do that and we get better at that work, I think it captures more and more and gets us closer and closer to our ultimate goal of 100%.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Sean said there, and thank you for saying that. When we throw out numbers like 90%, it can really hide some things that we really, really need to look at. And if you're a student, you're the parent of a student in the 10% that didn't graduate in time, that 90 means nothing to you.
Right.
I want to know what you're going to do for my student. And when Sean talks about students that aren't being as successful perhaps in our system as we or their parents would want them to be, we know who they are. And we've talked about that forever, and that's that equity work. It is our students with special education services. It is our students of color. It is our students where English isn't the language spoken in the home. It is students impacted by poverty. I mean, we know it, and the data shows it. And so again, that question is then what do we do? Because that's how you're going to get that 5 to 7%, is you can really say, what is it about our system? What are those barriers in our system that's making it so these groups of students and families aren't being supported to the need that they have? So thank you for saying that.
I did want to share that we do know, and we in North Thurston, we've written a grant the last couple of years to secure additional staffing to work specifically with youth who are identified as homeless. And as a result of their just amazing work, our students identified as homeless compared to the state graduated 20 percentage points above the state average. So we do know that if they receive the kind of individual attention and support that they need, they can be successful and graduate.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the clock, and we've had such a great conversation that we have sped through an hour and a little bit, and there's a couple of things more that we were going to talk about, but I think we need to put those aside for our next show. So think about those special fun things that may happen between now and January, and you can share with us then. But I do want to thank you for being with us today. I know you have very busy schedules, and we do appreciate you taking time to come spend it here at the Superintendent's Roundtable. Remember, if you're the parent of a preschool child, read to your child 20 minutes a day. It's one of the best things you can do to get them ready for their education. And while you're at it, throw in some number games so they get interested in math. If you're the parent of a school-age child, get involved with your child's education. There are many ways you can help. Check with your principal, your school's principal, or your child's teacher to see about volunteer opportunities or support that you can give them. Or go to your school's website and see what opportunities lie there. We want to thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again in January.